like to give you a special flowers.
Well, I hope all the moms in here feel very loved, valued, and supported. Lydia wrote that song that she just sang to us. Isn't that awesome? Give it up for her. Good job. So we are here celebrating Mother's Day weekend, and I hope, moms, you feel supported and cared for the rest of the service, because this service was designed with you in mind. Thanks so much. So we are celebrating, in addition to Mother's Day, we are celebrating that we have many friends from our Shelby campus here in the house becoming part of the Troy family this weekend. We're so glad you're here. And we have a reception planned out in the lobby so that you can see some familiar faces. You can head out to the orange balloons after the service, and then some of us will join you. I'll look forward to being out there, and you'll meet some new faces as well, meet some new friends. In addition, the celebrating continues tomorrow as we cut the ribbon and enter into our new Clinton Township permanent building. For a campus that has been meeting portably for 12 years, thanks to you and your generous giving to the Everyone campaign, we now have a permanent facility that opens tomorrow and will be open 24/7 to meet the needs of that community. So thank you so much for making that happen. It's very exciting. Something else we can look forward to as families is this coming July, we head up to Spring Hill Camp up north, where families celebrate the Rock Your Family Camp for a weekend together. It is a blast. Everything from paintball to zip lines, ropes courses, and kayaking, to having great spiritual connection in the auditorium in their large gatherings there. And if you're interested in more information, you can go online. You can look at the different housing options that exist, or you can go out to the lobby, and we'd love to answer your questions out there as well. And then finally, when you walked in tonight, you received a card. And that card is because all school year, we have leaders and volunteers that serve in our kids' area. They are phenomenal. But they take the summer off, and it becomes an opportunity for those of us here to stand in the gap and fill their place. And what that looks like is, for an hour or maybe a couple times over the summer, you and I, we show up and we get to experience the great program, the amazing program we have in Kensington Kids, and we get the joy of giving our life away. Now, my family, we're going to be doing this a couple of times this summer. They're finding that out for the first time right now. It's going to be great. We'll have brunch afterwards. And I want to invite you to join us and do that. If you fill out the card, we'll follow up with you and find a time that works for you. But that hour or two that you give up this summer is going to leave a lasting impact on not only you, but on the kids that you get to serve. Today, before we continue on with our service, I'm going to invite you to stand up, greet one another, welcome, celebrate those moms around you, and then we'll keep going.
Mom, you are beautiful. You are so kind. You are the strongest woman that I know.
Mom, thank you so much for being such an amazing example of a godly wife, mother, and woman of God.
Yeah, and thanks for leaving a legacy of a crazy home, but one that really lived out the gospel of Jesus. Whether we're in the grocery store and you're inviting people over for dinner, our home was always open.
And thank you for including Vic and I, after we lost our parents, into this craziness of your family. And thank you for pouring your love and your legacy into us. We love you.
And honestly, I love you to infinity. 'Cause darling, you're my masterpiece. And no Pablo Picasso could capture the beauty I see.
Mom, you are the strongest person I have ever met, and you teach us the most important lessons.
Mom, you are very brave, and I just want to be like you when I grow up.
Mom, you're one of the most hardworking people I know. I know it's a lot to take care of 4 girls all the time, but somehow you do it. We just appreciate everything you do for us.
Mom, thank you for cheering me up sometimes when I get sad.
Mom, you are the strongest person that I know. I admire your courage and your strength and all the joy that you bring to everyone around us.
And honestly, I love you to infinity. 'Cause darling, you're my masterpiece. And no Pablo Picasso could capture the beauty I see.
Mom, she's funny because she always tickles us every direction. Mom's really pretty.
Mom, you are everything I could ask for in a mom, and I truly respect how much you prioritize family first before everything else, and I'm truly blessed to have you in my life.
Mom, we love you, and you are a masterpiece.
Mom, I love you so much. You are a masterpiece.
Mom, you are a masterpiece.
Mom, you are truly a masterpiece.
Mom, you're a masterpiece. Mom, you're a masterpiece. We love you.
And honestly, I love you to infinity. 'Cause darling, you're my masterpiece. And no Pablo Picasso could capture the beauty I see. And honestly, I love you to infinity. 'Cause darling, you're my masterpiece. And no Pablo Picasso could capture the beauty I see.
So God, we want to thank you for our mothers. We thank you that you have created them as masterpieces, every single one of them. Thank you that for the gift that they are to every single one of us. And we pray that this weekend that they would know that they are appreciated and that they are loved. And I pray that you would show us how to express that, how to show that to them in extraordinary ways. We thank you for the gift of our mothers. Thank you that through them that you have shown us more of who you are and your heart for us. And so we thank you and we pray these things in your son's name. Amen. And so if you have not noticed, we are celebrating moms today. And so for all of you mothers here who are here today, we hope that this weekend that you feel loved and valued and that you feel appreciated. And as you can tell, I love my mom as well. And my mom is actually out of the country right now. She's in Korea, and they're 13 hours ahead of us, which means that after this service, Mother's Day has already started there. And so I'm going to pick up the phone, and I'm going to call her and wish her Happy Mother's Day. But for all of you mothers who are here, we want to say happy Mother's Day. Really happy Mother's Weekend, because all of you mothers are so extraordinary that you deserve more than a day. You really deserve a weekend. But we also wanted to say welcome to our Shelby friends who are here with us today. And we are so happy that you decided to join us today. And really for the past several weeks, we have been praying that your transition would be as smooth and seamless as possible. And so if there is anything that I or anyone can do to help with that for either you or your family, please do not hesitate to let us know. But tonight, I wanted to start off with a question. How many of you know who this man is? Just by a quick show of hands. How many, his picture's going to come up in a moment, but how many of you know who this person is? There we go. His picture is right there. How many of you know? Anyone, do you guys know who he is? So a few of you, a sort of a smattering. And his name is Professor Robert Kelly, and he is an expert on South Korean politics. And the vast majority of people in this world did not know who he was until March 10th. Of last year, because what happened on that day was that he was on the BBC and having a conversation about the impeachment of the South Korean president. And while he was on live television, his two young children busted in because they wanted to be a part of the interview as well. So take a look at the video.
Scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region, do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me. My apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
My apologies. South Korea's policy choices on North Korea have been severely limited in the last 6 months to a year.
And this really happened on live television. And immediately afterwards, it went viral, and the BBC estimates that it was viewed more than 100 million times in the first week. And so as a result, Robert Kelly and his family became instant internet sensations. And of course, Robert Kelly, he's not just a professor, he's not just an expert on South Korean politics, but as we saw, he's also a dad. And when I saw that video for the very first time, what I noticed was that when his two children sort of barreled into the room, at least in my opinion, he responded like most dads would. Not in the most warm and nurturing of ways. Because if you notice, his daughter walks up right beside him, and he's like, no, get away from me, pushes her aside as if to say, leave, you're ruining everything. And later on in the interview, he's so embarrassed that he could hardly speak. And I guess I wasn't the only one who saw this, because there's a comedy show out of New Zealand called Jono and Ben who also picked up on it. And so they created a spoof as to how a mother, that at least in their opinion, how a mother would respond in the same situation. So take a look.
The question now is, how do people respond to their scandals?
For the wider region, I think one of your children has just walked in, but I mean, shifting sands in the region, do you think relations with the North may change?
It's unclear at the moment what effect former President Gun-hae's impeachment will have on the territories. Unfortunately, discontent in South Korea is not only related to President Gun-hae's administration.
Okay.
This is a major embarrassment for South Korea, who often criticizes the North of corruption, and who now find themselves in the middle of a massive corruption case themselves.
Sorry, you do look rather busy there. We can reschedule
President Gun-hae is very likely to face jail time too.
Okay.
I would argue, in an attempt to make an example of her.
Right, so what does this all mean for the future of South Korea?
So the future of South Korea really hangs in the balance.
Oh my God, is that a bomb?
And it will be interesting to see how the North reacts to this new shift in power.
Indeed. Well, this certainly has been... sorry, your husband is...
I anticipate there will be more to come from this region in the next few months.
Kate Wordsworth, you're obviously busy. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, let's find this sock then.
And of course, it's exaggerated. Of course, they're playing off of stereotypes. But I hope what you were able, the primary message that you were able to get from that video is that moms are amazing. Because they truly are. You truly are. Because as a mom, oftentimes you have, not oftentimes, always, you have to wear a lot of different hats. And you have to be able to operate in some pretty chaotic environments. Yet, for those of you who are moms here, you do so every single day with such warmth, kindness, and love. And when you think about motherhood, it's filled with some incredible joys. Like when you see and you hold your child for the very first time, or when you see your child take their very first step, or when you hear them say, "I love you," for the first time, or when they graduate from high school or college, or when they finally move out and leave you alone. Actually, I think that's more so dads, not necessarily moms. Or when your children grow up and they get married and they have children of their own. And so when you think about motherhood, it's filled with some incredible joys. But also, there are huge challenges as well. There's the physical exhaustion, there are the tantrums and the arguments. There are those times that are so heartbreaking and so difficult when your child is going through something so hard in their life. And yet, as a mother, you don't know what to do, or there might not be anything you can do. And of course, there's the tension that a lot of mothers experience between career and family. And there's the pressure that culture places on mothers to be like this, to do it like this, to have children like this. It's not easy being a mom, and sometimes the challenges can overshadow the joys. But my hope for all of you mothers here today is that you would know that on this incredible journey called motherhood, that the God of the universe who created you and your extraordinary children that you have the privilege of being a mother to is with you. And in talking about this today, we're going to be looking at the story of a woman, of a mother in the Old Testament named Hagar. And who Hagar was that she was an Egyptian slave. And Hagar served a woman named Sarah who was married to a man named Abram. And Abram later had his name changed by God to Abraham. And Abraham was the one who God gave these extraordinary promises to in the Old Testament. And one of them being that even though Abraham was old and his wife Sarah physically could not have children, and at the time they didn't have any children, but God promised Abraham that he would have a child and that his descendants would be more numerous than the stars in the sky. And the incredible thing is that the scriptures tell us is that Abraham believed God. Even though it was physically impossible for him and Sarah to have a child, he believed that God was the God of the possible. But fast forward 10 years later, after God had given him the promise, there was still no child. And we have to understand that Abraham and Sarah were already old, so time wasn't on their side. And when we pick up the story in the book of Genesis, which is the very first book in the Bible, we see that Sarah's faith started wavering. And she decided to take matters into her own hands. And she said to her husband, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave," meaning Hagar, "and perhaps I can build a family through her." And no one would do this today. But thousands of years ago, in that time, in that culture, this was normal. It doesn't mean that it was right. It doesn't mean that God approved. It just meant that a lot of people did it. So Sarah says to her husband Abraham, "Hey, I want you to go sleep with my slave." And Abraham's response is basically, okay, if that's what you really want, I'll take one for the team. And so he goes and he sleeps with her. And you know what? Sarah's plan worked. Hagar got pregnant. But even though this whole thing was Sarah's idea, she ended up getting jealous of Hagar, and she started taking out that jealousy on everyone around her, including her husband Abraham. And she said to him, "You're responsible for the wrong that I'm suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she's pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." And so this was a great time for Abraham to show some leadership, to take an active approach. But he doesn't, because he's incredibly passive and says to his wife, "Your slave Hagar is in your hands. Do with her whatever you think best." He basically says to her, "Do whatever you want." So you know what? That's exactly what Sarah did. She did whatever she wanted to do, and she took out her anger, her frustration, her jealousy out on her slave Hagar. And it says in Genesis chapter 16, verse 6, that Sarah mistreated Hagar. But I think it was more along the lines of abuse. Because life became so unbearable for Hagar, she felt like she had no choice but to run away. And of all places that Hagar could have run, she decides to run into the middle of a desert, which basically tells us that's how badly she wanted to get away from Sarah. And so when you pick up the story at that point, Hagar's situation was horrible. She was in a bad, bad place because she was in the middle of a desert with nowhere to go. And she also had no one to help her because she was from Egypt. All of her family, all of her friends were there, and Egypt was far away. Also, she was pregnant. She had nowhere to sleep, probably had very little money and very little food. And she was completely alone, which at that time in that culture, for a woman to be completely alone was a dangerous thing because they could have been raped. She could have been raped, abducted, maybe even killed by merchants and traders. But it was into this desperate situation that God sent his angel. And in this desert, this angel of God finds Hagar. And this angel said to Hagar, what I want you to do is I want you to go back to Sarah. And if you can imagine, try putting yourself in Hagar's shoes. How difficult that must have been to go back to the person who had treated you so poorly, so harshly, the one that you had just run away from. And so she went back, but it saved her life. But at the same time, God, through this angel, also gave Hagar an extraordinary promise. A promise that was very similar to the one that he gave to Abraham. And that God told Hagar that your descendants will be too numerous to count. And God also told Hagar, that child that you're pregnant with is a boy, and his name is to be Ishmael. And so Hagar responded by then giving God a name. And she said, you are the God who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. And so Hagar named God, the God who sees. And that name, it speaks to what God had done for Hagar, in that God had seen her. God had seen Hagar the person, not Hagar the slave that everyone else saw, not Hagar the one who had no rights, no value, who was treated like a piece of property that could be bought and sold and thrown away. No, God saw her. And in seeing her, he communicated three powerful things to Hagar that day. First of all, he communicated that she had value, that she was more than just a slave, that she was more than just a piece of property, but rather she had dignity and worth. And that even though to everybody else around her, she was invisible because she was a slave, even though she was invisible to everyone around her, it said that God saw her because who Hagar was his child, his daughter. And therefore, she had greater value and greater worth than she could ever understand or imagine. But at the same time, also, in seeing Hagar, what God also communicated was that he cared deeply for her. And in the scriptures, there is a connection between God seeing as well as God caring. And one example of this is found in the book of Exodus. And Exodus is the second book in the Old Testament. And in this book, God was having a conversation with Moses. And who Moses was that he was one of the most powerful, most extraordinary leaders in all the Old Testament. Moses was the one who led God's people out of slavery in Egypt. Moses was the one who parted the Red Sea. He was the one who brought the 10 Commandments down from the mountain. And God said to Moses, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned. God expresses care about their suffering. And so what we see in this one verse is that because God saw what his people were going through in Egypt, he cared. There's that connection between God seeing and God caring. And when God saw Hagar, because God saw what she had gone through and her current situation, he also deeply cared. And he expressed that care by providing for Hagar on two separate occasions, which is our next point. Because for God to also see means that he will also provide. And as I mentioned, God provided for Hagar on 2 separate instances by sending 2 angels. Of course, we just saw in Genesis 16, in the passage that we're looking at today, he sent an angel to her the first time when she's in the middle of a desert and basically said to her, I want you to go back. And in doing so, saved her life. But also in Genesis 21, God sent a second angel. And in Genesis 21, once again, I don't know what it is with Hagar and deserts, but once again, she was in the middle of a desert. But this time she wasn't alone, but she was with her son Ishmael, and he was about to die because of thirst. And God sends an angel and opens up her eyes to a well that was right there and saved his life and probably saved her life as well. And so to be seen by God also means that God will provide. And also, God has provided for all of us here as well in some extraordinary ways. And one of the things that God asks us to do is also with his resources that he's given us to give. And so we're going to provide an opportunity to do that. And so we're going to be receiving our offering. And so ushers, if you want to come down and to receive our offering for today. And if this is the first time you are here and the first time you are visiting, please do not, first of all, we want to say that we are thrilled that you're here. But please do not feel any obligation to give, because this does not have to be your moment. But what we'd love for you to do instead is that after the service to go out into the lobby and to drop by our starting point table. And you'll see those people, they have a bright orange shirt with the word starting point across the front. And we'd love for you to stop by and ask any questions that you may have, and also have a conversation about how you can get engaged in our community. But to be seen by God, what it means is that it means to have value, it means to be cared for, but also it means that God will provide. And for all of you moms here today, some days I know you probably feel like Hagar. You probably feel invisible, that nobody sees you. And I came across an interesting article a number of years ago, and it was written by an author named Nicole Johnson. And in it, she writes about a little bit about her experience, and it's titled, I Am Invisible. And this is what she writes. She says, it all began to make sense. The blank stares, the lack of response, the way one of the kids will walk into the room while I'm on the phone and ask to be taken to the store. And inside I'm thinking, can't you see? I'm on the phone. Obviously not. No one can see if I'm on the phone or cooking or sweeping the floor or even standing on my head in the corner, because no one can see me at all. I am invisible. And some days I'm only a pair of hands, nothing more. Can you fix this? Can you tie this? Can you open this? Some days I'm not a pair of hands. I'm not even a human being. I'm a clock to ask what time is it. I'm a satellite guide to answer what number is the Disney Channel. I'm a card to order right around 5:30, please. I was certain that these were the hands that once held books, and the eyes that studied history, and the mind that graduated. But now they had all disappeared into the peanut butter, never to be seen again. Can any of you moms relate? Absolutely. And if you've ever felt like this as a mom, if you feel like this today, that even when it feels like, you know what, that nobody sees you, that when your children look at you, that all they see is a chauffeur, a cook, a bank, a maid, an income earner. That's all they see. And you are invisible, or you feel invisible to them. That in those moments that you would know that the God of the universe, he sees you. And because he sees you, you have incredible value. You have greater value than you could ever understand or imagine, not because of what you do or because of what you have, but rather because of who you are as a child, as a daughter of God. And you have such extraordinary value that more than 2,000 years ago, the only Son of God, Jesus, he stepped into human history. He was tried, he was tortured, he was nailed to a cross and killed for your sins and raised again to life 3 days later. So that if you chose to put your faith in him, you could experience not just an ordinary life, but one that is so extraordinary, one that is filled with greater hope, love, and life than you could ever understand or imagine. As a mom, because God sees you, you have incredible value. But also that you would know that because God sees you, that he also deeply cares. That no matter what you're going through right now, no matter how amazing or how heartbreaking it is, no matter how extraordinary or painful it might be, that because God sees you and God sees the situation that you're in, that you would know that he understands and that he also deeply cares about your situation, just like he did for his people when they were in Egypt, just like he did for Hagar when she was in the middle of that desert. Because he saw them, he cared. Because he sees you, he also deeply cares. But also that you would know that because God sees you, that he will also provide for you. And sometimes that provision may come in the form of something that you may not want to do, just like it was for Hagar. Because when she was in that desert, God's angel showed up and said to Hagar, I want you to go back to your master Sarah. Something that I could imagine that she did not want to do, but she did, and it saved her life. That was God's provision in her life. And maybe for some of you moms here, that God's provision may be something like that, something that you do not want to do, something that you don't enjoy doing. Or it might be God opening your eyes to something that was right in front of you. Because again, the second time that Hagar was in the desert, God opened her eyes to a well that was in front of her and saved her life, and also Ishmael, her son Ishmael's life as well. But whatever it is, that you would know that he will provide for you. And the name of God that we saw here in this passage that Hagar gave to God was the God who sees. But another name for God in the scriptures is Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides. So for all of you moms, that no matter what you need in life, whether on certain days it's strength, whether on certain days it's perseverance, whether on certain days it's greater joy or patience or whatever it may be, that you would know that the God of the universe, because he sees you, he will provide. And so for all of you moms here today, we honor you, we celebrate you, and that you would know that you are valued more than anything that you could ever understand or imagine, that you have that great of value, that you would know that you are cared for, but at the same time that you would also know that you will be provided for by the God of the universe who sees you. But at the same time, something that we also recognize is that today is a difficult day for many people as well. And I was reminded of that earlier this week when a funeral happened. And for two young children, their young mom passed away. And so I can understand for some of you here that this weekend is a difficult weekend because it's a reminder of maybe your mother who is no longer here. For others of you, the reason why it's a difficult weekend is that it's a reminder of something that you so desperately desire to have in your life, a child, but for some reason it has not happened. Or for others of you, it might be something else. And if that is your situation today, that you would also know this truth, is that God sees you as well. And because he sees you, you have incredible value. Not because of what you have or don't have, not because of what you do or don't do, but rather simply because of who you are as a daughter of God. That you would also know that in your situation, that God deeply cares. And that you would also know that he will provide for you as he has done in the past, that he will provide for you in your present and also in your future because he sees you. And so whatever situation that you find yourself in today, whether it's amazing, it's celebratory, it's extraordinary, or whether it's difficult and it's challenging, that whatever situation that you find yourself in today, that you would know that you can take courage, that you can have hope, that you can have strength. And that's the song that we're going to be singing right now. And it reminds us that we can take courage because the God of the universe is with us. And so if you want to stand and sing, we want to invite you to do that. Or if you're just not at a place where you want to do that and you just want to allow these words to just wash over you and to fill your soul, that you would sit there and allow that to happen as well. But whatever it is, that we would be reminded, just as we are listening or singing this song, that we can take courage because we are not alone and that God sees us. Let's enter into this moment.
Slow down, take time, breathe in, he said he'd reveal what's to come. The thoughts in his mind, always higher than mine, he revealed all to come. So take courage, my heart, stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. Hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing. He's never failing. Sing praise, my soul, find strength in joy. Let his words lead you on. Do not forget his great faithfulness. He'll finish what he's begun. Take courage, my heart, stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. Hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing. He's never failing. So take courage, my heart, stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting. He's in the waiting. Hold on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing. He's never failing. And you who holds the stars, who calls them each by name, will surely keep your promise to me, that I will rise in your victory. Sing that out. And you who holds the stars, who calls them each by name, will surely keep your promise to me, that I will rise in your victory. on to your hope as your triumph unfolds. He's never failing. He's never failing.
And so as we close today, we wanted to pray a blessing over all of you mothers. And so if a mom is standing next to you, if your mom is standing next to you, we want to invite you just to put your hand on their shoulder. And so together, let's pray this blessing over all the moms in this room. Mothers, you are embraced with an overwhelming, never-ending love of God. He adores you. He constantly pursues you. No wall will ever stop him. No lie can keep him away. Your unbelief won't discourage him because his love is not human. You are a beautiful warrior. You fight for your family. You defend your children. You defend all children. You run to the helpless. You bring beauty to the fight. You plant flowers in the mud. You bring pink to the darkness. You are lace among the grind. Your smile lights up the family room. Your laugh brightens the alley. You stand equal alongside the heads of the family, the heads of the neighborhood, the heads of the boardroom. Your power is not overshadowed by the powerful. Because you are powerful, you are strong. You bring light into the darkness. You transform every single room you walk into. And don't ever forget, he loves you. He adores you. He sings over you. You put a twinkle in his eye. He forgave you. You are forgiven, completely forgiven. And he sees you, and he knows you, and he is with you, and he will never, ever leave you. You are not alone. Don't ever believe that you are alone. And you will finish strong. You will finish bruised. You will finish exhausted, but you will finish. You'll complete this race. And know your kids will be okay. God's got them. They'll be okay. Your family will survive. You are changing the next generation. You are changing the world, one son and one daughter at a time. That's you, mothers. Happy, happy Mother's Day. And so to all of you mothers, we want to celebrate you today. For all of you who have mothers, I hope that you will celebrate them today, and that in some way that you will communicate to them that they are loved, that they are appreciated, that they are valued. And so thank you so much for being here. For all of you mothers, happy Mother's Day. And we also want to invite you to come back next week as we're starting a brand new series titled Defining Moments. And if there's anyone who would like to receive prayer, somebody to pray with them, we want to invite you to come forward as our prayer team will be here. But thank you so much for being here. Happy Mother's Day weekend, everyone.
done this before.
Without your spirit, we stand with no strength. I know my time is passing away, and the works of your hands, what will remain? The favor of the Lord rest upon us. Oh Lord, establish the work of our hands. Oh Lord, establish the work of our hands. Teach us to number the length of our days. Pour out your power. We'll pour out your praise. Teach us to